working in Hollywood, you have a diverse array of characters, quite literally, figuratively, theoretically. Is it difficult to mingle with people who come from such diverse backgrounds and schools of thought, especially when it comes to politics and such?
I think you're might be mischaracterizing Hollywood. It's much more homogenous politically than. Well, yeah, of course. I mean, it's people who get into the arts, and have maybe like a real feeling of not only rebelliousness, but also driven by, great empathy, because you want to think about characters and stories and embody those emotions, and you feel comfortable expressing yourself. It's all things that I would associate more with like liberal politics, and, most Hollywood stories are underdog stories. We value kind of the Mr. Smith Goes to Washington kind of thing. And so that to me is all associated with what I would consider to be, liberal ideals.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking about it more from a science perspective. And when we look at the perhaps less than ideal scientific environment, that has shifted across aisles, where perhaps 20, 30 years ago, it was more prevalent on the liberal side of things. Now it's kind of overreached into the libertarian conservative side of thought. Oh. So I'm curious, when you're speaking to someone in Hollywood who's perhaps anti-science,
like the horseshoe theory of healthcare.
Tell me about the horseshoe theory of healthcare.
Oh no, the horseshoe theory of politics is just that, and the extreme left and the extreme right are far closer than they are to the center. But so in terms of health stuff, yes, you occasionally see somebody who has a notion about, an epidemic that's different than your notions.
I love that you call them notions.
Well, I don't know what else to, I don't know what other euphemisms I could use. Yeah, but it's first of all, it's far less frequent than you might imagine.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, to be working on a major movie, it just a major movie. All I mean is it's it's just small and
a big production, basically.
Yeah, I just mean you're vetted by so many levels of a system that you tend to be a little more I would say mainstream about your thoughts about that stuff. And for a while, I think for COVID at least, it was a requirement that you're vaccinated to work on a big production. So maybe it weeds out some people.
Yeah. Being as grounded as you are, empathetic as you are,
continue. Okay.
Do you ever get questioning? Do you ever begin questioning yourself about things perhaps you should be doing for your health but aren't doing? Do you ever go down that path, looking for quick fixes, thinking about preventive healthcare in a way that is very exciting, very passionate?
Oh, that's interesting. Not really. I had to I played a bodybuilder in a movie 3 years ago or something. And yes, I was just trying to gain weight. It was a struggle for me to gain weight, which I know is enviable, I guess. But in my situation for that, it was difficult because I really wanted to gain, not just weight, but muscle. And so, yeah, I was taking, creatine. I mean, I'm not doing steroids or anything like that. But yes, I was trying, I was working with a guy, a trainer or whatever, but I was taking all sorts of supplements I didn't know anything about.
Did you notice a change with the supplements?
Yeah, of course. I gained a lot of muscle, for this movie.
But probably not from the supplements, more so from the workouts and
I'm sure.
Nutrition.
Yeah, sure. I couldn't tell you if I was taking a chalk in a capsule or creatine I have no idea about that stuff. And I recognize that, or I have a skepticism about, the supplement industry.
You do?
Yeah, of course.
Well, that's exciting. I don't know. These days, a lot of people just have natural belief in it.
Oh, I know. I understand the temptation to have a belief in it. But am I wrong in saying that it's just a totally unregulated market and we don't know what's in there, and every time they test, people come back surprised?
Keep going. That was so good.
Is that true?
That's very true.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that seems to be the case.
And it's, I think your view of it is quite pure, because if you're spending a lot of time on social media, which unfortunately I do because of my work and trying to understand these perspectives, I find that there is this huge belief in this unregulated industry, so much so that it corrupts people's relationship with healthcare as a whole. And that gets me really upset and frustrated and all that.
Oh, you're saying the suspicion around something that you should be suspicious about then bleeds into things that you should not be suspicious about?
Partly, yes, but also the fact that they have created an enemy of the healthcare system, of the pharmaceutical industry. Oh. They've heard so much negative about it that they now view this as the cure for it.
Oh, I see.
Where it is,
this just comes from a sense of boredom?
I think it's going to be individually dependent a lot, but
if we were in a war zone, wouldn't we all just want penicillin at the ready?
Yes.
And is it based on the fact that we're not in a war zone that we want fish oils?
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's problems of progress.
Yeah, problems of progress.
Yeah, or safetyism.
Of what?
Safetyism, that we live in a safer society. Crime rates are lower than they were the decade before and the decade prior. So as a result, we're creating worries that perhaps are unnecessary worries, and we have more free time, especially these days when we can have food delivered to us, pretty much everything delivered to us at our beck and call, and you don't have to be a billionaire in order to have that happen.
That's interesting. I recognize a kind of cousin of that in myself, and I wonder if you share it too, because we have semi-similar backgrounds, which is like Eastern European families. And I recognize in myself a kind of like anxiety about nothing. I think just based on like, generations and generations of people worried about getting killed, I feel a kind of paranoia. But I tack it on to things like I had too much coffee this morning and I might not sleep in 12 hours from now because I had too much coffee. And I find myself worrying about things that are just fantastical nonsense. But I think maybe it's because I have been wired for war. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, my wife's family is a similar immigrant story to your family, and experienced real horrors. And my wife is, a paranoid, but she thinks it's because that there might be asbestos in our house, when it's been painted over for generations and it's fine, stuff like that. Do you have this feeling at all based on your family history as well?
I don't know that I necessarily have that feeling, but I definitely yearn for control probably more than the average person, which is why being on a plane freaks me out. More so now than ever before.
I see, just not being in control of the...
Yeah, just not being in control of the scenario.
Did your family suffer the horrors of the past?
I don't know that they suffered specifically horrors of the past. I know that there was a lot of anti-Semitism where we were growing up in Russia, and that's the reason why we left.
Yeah. And during World War II, they were where? Were they fighting in the Russian army? Or?
Hard to know. My grandfather was part of the war. He was part of the Russian Air Force, he was very pro-Stalin, go Stalin, and my dad was very anti-Stalin. So it was interesting how the generations would debate amongst themselves, and I didn't know which side to take.
Your dad was alive during Stalin?
No, but
the ethos of Stalin.
Ethos of Stalin, and discussing how terrible he treated the population versus my grandfather, who served in his military, believed that he should support it. So I saw their conflict about it.
I see.
I get confused in thinking about the notion that anxieties could be coming from generations of the past, is because on one side, it seems like sci-fi, right? We're suffering as a result of our past generation suffering.
Oh, that's not how I think about it at all.
Oh, how do you think about it?
I don't think about it in any kind of like molecular level.
But here's the cool thing. There is a molecular pathway.
I bet there is. That's just, I'm not smart enough to conceive of that. So I just think of it very practically, is that my mom, who grew up with paranoid parents, who grew up with paranoid grandparents, who grew up with paranoid great-grandparents, she used to wake me up in the middle of the night because she would have dreams that I was drowning, and she wanted to make sure I was alive. So she would wake me up and tell me that she had a nightmare about me drowning. And so of course I never learned how to swim. So yes, there perhaps is a cellular, whatever memory.
Sure.
But I
there's
just think,
a human aspect.
Yeah, I just think of it as this very obvious thing of my mom was paranoid that I was going to drown because her parents were paranoid that the Cossacks were going to, you know what I mean? Something like that.
And it highlights the notion of how much humans are nature and nurture.
Of course.
In a combination.
Can you explain to me the biological
I wish I was smart enough to explain it well, but there is something called epigenetics, where your experiences and how you move through the world can impact your genetic code and your genetic expression. So if you have this family history of people who were highly anxious, highly nervous about not dancing in the prairie because there were lions about, or there was a military coming, perhaps that has been passed down genetically to you in a way where perhaps the genes weren't impacted, but the expression of those genes were impacted. And then there's the behavioral aspect, because from a survival standpoint, if your parents are a certain way and it taught you to survive in that way, you then pass that down to your children. But now I'm seeing it kind of on the flip side, where a lot of my patients' children are doing the opposite of what their parents are doing, or perhaps disagreeing with them on the political side of things. How do you fall on that when discussing politics or stuff with your family?
Oh, we're completely in line.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like discussing politics in public because I just feel silly. Because my platform is not from politics. My platform is from, running from zombies in an effective way. So I feel a little silly talking about politics because I feel unqualified. But I come from a very, very cliche, liberal Jewish family. 100 years of voting for American Democrats. I mean, and it's and it's very simply summarized by my aunt, who was my mentor in my life. She died at 107 in 2019. I lived with her in my 30s. She was my main relative that I was close to and admired. Anyway,
What did you admire about her?
Oh, she just was so practical. She grew up in Poland, and she was just like so comically unsentimental. And I just I wish I had that. I wish I grew up in her era where I could be like that too, instead of this kind of, worried, anxious about social situation, all this nonsense that just seems like fantasy. But anyway, just to explain my politics really briefly, I just asked her once, have you voted for a Republican ever? And she said no. And I said, why? And she said, because I care about the poor. She said this so bluntly, and I'm sure many Republicans care about the poor and everything, but for me, it just explained this kind of coming here poor to America and just kind of caring about the people that you identify with. So anyway, that was our family's politics, but there's nothing more fascinating than that about it, or strident. In terms of her, I admire that so much. This kind of, because it's the opposite of the world I live in. The world I live in, because I'm an actor, is where we talk about everything that we're thinking and everything that we're doing. And I'm sitting here with a mic an inch from my face, as I often am sitting with a mic an inch from my face. And I'm so disgusted by that, by myself. That of course I end up admiring these people who not only are not touting their own accomplishments, but actually kind of turned off to the idea that their accomplishments should be discussed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's interesting how in Hollywood it almost forces you to behave in that way in order to be successful.
Yes.
Right? Because if you're not promoting the movie, it seems like you're disinterested, and you can actually come off more problematic.
Great point. That's a great point. I'm in this weird industry and in a weird time where, when I started acting, there was people would go on Jay Leno's show, The Tonight Show, now Jimmy Fallon. People would go on Leno, and it would be seen, everybody liked Jay Leno personally, but it would be seen as I got to go on this show. It felt like selling out. This was in the late 90s, early 2000s. And it felt like the worst thing you could do is I have to go talk about the movie and everything. And now you have to rap on Jimmy Fallon with your shirt off in order to sell your movie. And again, it's fine. That's all fine. And Jimmy Fallon's really great too, and everybody loves him, and he's brilliant, and the show's great, and everything like that. But the kind of the slope of kind of what we open ourselves up to publicly is so steep. And since I started acting, and so I have a little bit of that old mentality of I should not talk about myself so much. I should not do all these games and make myself look so cute and accessible, because A, it makes me uncomfortable, but B, does it really help my job when I'm trying to play a character and you're trying to believe that the story is this? But primarily it just makes me feel a little strange.
Sure. What do you think has driven that change in Hollywood, that people feel they need to be more accessible?
Well, first of all, it's a necessity of the industry. You're auditioning for so few parts. Actors are up for so few parts, and I cast movies now because I'm making movies, and when I get
Flex.
What's that?
Flex.
Yeah, no idea. But when I get resumes from the agents, it talks about how many followers they have, and this is something that I don't consider because my movies are not big commercial things, but it's something definitely somebody is considering.
Interesting.
And maybe even my investors are considering. So that's a thing. So that's part of it. A lot of people would say this is a necessity, and then of course there's the temptation to have your thoughts and feelings and jokes in public, and people just have that temptation. I do too, but I do it in different ways. I wrote a comic essay that's in the New Yorker this week. That is my version of Twitter. I want to have my funny jokes, public, because whatever, narcissism. But I have maybe access to old style media, like a magazine or a traditional movie that allows me to exercise all that stuff that I want to do,
Yeah.
And if I didn't have that stuff, then sure, I'd be on Twitter all day doing my jokes, of course.
Yeah. You know what upset me so much after our Time Magazine meeting was that I went to go try and find that Time Magazine in a bodega somewhere in New York.
Yeah.
And I walked 2 miles, stopping at every bodega. Not one sold magazines.
Wait, was that right?
Yeah.
No one sold magazines. That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
So as a medium, it was oh man, magazines aren't a thing anymore. People don't seem to.
That's true. But
want to
what about the internet? Time?
Well, yeah, you could find it online.
Yeah. But I imagine that's
just the medium has changed, and
of course.
Maybe I romanticize it a bit of opening the thing and seeing oh my God, there.
Yeah,
it
of
is.
course.
Yeah,
you're exactly right. exactly.
I'm curious, you talk a lot in other podcasts, and we've actually discussed it a bit with your experience with social anxiety. And interestingly enough, like even with the Time Magazine event that we were both very lucky to attend, I saw you for sitting across the room, and I have also, I consider myself an introvert. I have social anxiety, and I said, oh, I'd love to approach you to have this conversation that we're having today. And it took 100,000 effort to just come over and say hi to you. How do you do that at scale in Hollywood when you're meeting all these very big name, high profile individuals? How do you handle your social anxiety? What strategies do you use?
Oh, I guess I don't go to a lot of things. There are some people who do go to a lot of things. I'm just not one of them.
Okay.
And so I don't really have that. But, a lot of times when I'm at, some industry thing, like I went to the premiere of a play the other night, like I knew half the audience because we worked together in theater.
Okay.
And so when you know somebody and you work with them in theater, especially in theater, where you kind of, you're overwhelmed with the feeling of warmth for these people, at least that's my feeling. And then some like bigger industry things that I'm forced to go to an award show or something. Yeah, that's not like my place of comfort. And I don't know that I have any good strategies, but, it's like an obligation. When I was, first got kind of well known and I got invited to award shows and stuff, I would complain to my father all the time. This was during the Obama administration. So I would tell my dad, I can't believe I have to go to this thing. It's so stupid. It's so shallow. It's so fake. Everybody acts so fake. And my dad said, Obama is probably, sitting with, a contingent of, farmers in Iowa right now. Does he really want to go to that so he can listen about, corn seeding, for 3 hours? No, but you do things out of obligation because they're a bigger part of your job and respect for your industry. And as soon as he said that, I saw everything completely different. I saw these award shows as promoting an industry that's been good to me and televising an award show. And sure, awards are all shallow and all that stuff. But my father gave me such great perspective to understand that these are like, the kind of obligatory things of being lucky in a competitive industry and supporting an industry that's allowed me to have a family and an apartment and everything.
Is your dad a therapist? Because that's like cognitive behavioral therapy with changing I have to do something. We call it masturbation, actually.
What do you mean?
Masturbation.
I understand.
Because we all often say like, we must do something, we have to do something, when in reality, you're fortunate enough to do it, or you actually do want to do it. So Obama wants to sit with those farmers because he wants to be president.
That's right. That's a great way to think
that
about
mind shift set that he created for you is what we would achieve to do in cognitive behavioral therapy.
Oh, that's interesting. Yes. Is there some point though where you would tell somebody, don't do that, create your boundary?
Well, it would be a choice, and you have to come to a place where you're comfortable making the choice and living with the consequences of making that choice. So perhaps if you don't want to meet with farmers, you'd be making that choice in perhaps the risk of your presidency or your campaign. And if you're okay with that risk, that's a risk calculation that's comfortable for you.
Right, like anything
which is
else.
all life is.
Yeah, like anything else. That's really interesting. That's really interesting. So I guess that's kind of what I was doing. But I guess also it just kind of made me look at things in a way that was less worried about them being shallow or meaningful and more just about, and it's also a little bit of like humbling of my own, kind of pretense, I would say.
Sure. This is a bit of a strange question, but do you find it more difficult to fail in private or succeed in public for your nervous system?
Wait, more difficult?
Yeah. Like what's more of a strain for you? Because it seems like going to these award shows is succeeding in public.
Yeah.
But would you rather succeed in public and have that difficulty on your nervous system or fail in private?
Yeah. I am like a wired as like a not very happy person. And so both things kind of make me, feel really uncomfortable. And so I do notice that like when I'm, I went through like a period of like not working that much and stuff. And like, I was really depressed and I thought my career is over. And then, 2 years later, I don't have a second free, and I'm getting praised or whatever. And I feel like this is so awful and meaningless. This is so disgusting. Who have I turned into? And so, I think I'm wired a certain way to like kind of be, not pleased, with my own, feelings about things. And so I'm not sure. Both are really uncomfortable for me. I guess at least if you're working, you're making a living. And, I guess there's some like,
the practical sense.
There's practical benefits of like being unhappy about success, I guess.
Yeah, that's really interesting because, in thinking about the hedonic treadmill of it all, of seeing follower counts or movie box office results, you constantly want to see better. When you don't see better, you get upset. When you take a break from doing it, you're wondering why you're not doing it. You start questioning yourself. And that anxiety is just perpetually there no matter what. It's kind of ingrained in us in humans. It's the power of negativity or the power of bad that we all experience. And I think the power of negativity is why I think podcasts have risen to such popularity, and social media as a whole, as a sort of platform, because people love to look for controversy. That's why rubbernecking exists, why humans, when they see a fight, we all want to run and watch. So social media is just an extension of that. In fact, in a lot of ways, the social media algorithm is just a mirror of us as a society.
What's the purpose of us being attracted to that kind of thing?
That's a good question. Perhaps with your bachelor's degree, you'd probably be more suited to answer that question.
And anthropology, over the course of 18 years, getting a bachelor's degree. No, I'm like the least qualified to answer anything. I don't know. I remember when there was like fights in school, and remember in middle school, they were like, they're going to fight on the lawn, which was like a block and a half away. And I remember just being terrified. I remember just feeling like a little kid, like I can't.
Like worried for them?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And really turned my stomach that there was this bloodlust amongst my peers. Like, we want to go watch that. Oh, it just scared me so much. I can remember it now. I can remember these sweet, thin kids fighting each other on the lawn, and just how sad I was to be there. And I couldn't look up, and I was sad. And I knew these kids, they were sweethearts. They were sweet kids. They were both in the good spelling group and reading group and everything. And then they were fighting. It just disgusted me to this day. Yeah,
wow. You have such a strong level of empathy.
Oh, is that what it is?
I mean, you're seeing someone else experience something and you're having all the feelings of it, which is the mirroring that our neurons do quite well. But you're doing it and experiencing it at such a high level. So I'm curious, does that help you in your line of work because you're able to mirror so well?
Oh, maybe I didn't, think about it. The only thing I do think about it, maybe I had never connected this, but I started my writing career as a playwright, and I've had like 5 plays here in New York, and I'm often criticized for writing unlikable characters, and to me these characters are incredibly likable because they do mean things in the plays and everything, but to me my heart breaks for these kind of broken people who are misbehaving, and I was always shocked that I would get characterized this way. And then after I did The Social Network too, I did a few other movies where I played a mean person. I did a Batman movie. I played a villain. I do these Now You See Me movies. I play these arrogant characters. We just had a new one come out a few months ago. And to me, I sympathize with these people. They're control freaks, and they're anxious and I get criticized for, once again, playing an arrogant, mean, unlikable character. And it's funny, I'm just connecting this now for the first time because you brought up empathy. Maybe I do have empathy for people like that, whereas mainstream audiences, it seems, between my plays and these movies, maybe don't connect to my characters as much as I do. They see it as unlikable, whereas to me it seems like, no, these are
flawed humans, like we all are.
We should have the most sympathy for these people.
Yeah.
The first movie I directed, I got really criticized. It was called When You Finish Saving the World, for having 2 leads that were like not relatable lead roles. And to me, my heart broke for those 2 people, and mainstream audiences really rejected the movie as not finding a way into these characters. And it taught me a lot about what audiences want. And then for my second movie, which was the one I made in Poland, I completely reimagined my connection to I completely reimagined what an audience would feel for characters, and I made them far more likable.
Interesting. So you actually had to shift as a result of adapting to the mainstream audience.
Out of a complete terror and panic, because I was editing my first movie, and we were sending out the screeners early on. While you're editing, you send it out just for kind of feedback from other people. Yes, we sent it out to an editor who's like one of the great editors in American film, and he just screamed at me for an hour on the phone. How could I have made something like this? The characters, there was no way in, and they were not doing things that were sympathetic. And I realized, he's going to be the voice of a lot of people. And so, even before we were halfway through finished editing that movie, I wrote my next movie, which was about 2 kids going to see where their, family died in the Holocaust. How much more sympathy can you have? And a lot of that was just a reaction to feeling like, I'd done something that was not aligned with general audiences.
Do you share the same empathy that you have for these villainous characters that perhaps you would also feel for those who are part of the justice system, that are criminals that have been sentenced to crimes? Do you also feel that level of empathy for them as well?
Oh my God, of course. Yeah, of course. I mean, unless somebody seems, like a immoral,
Yeah, I'm curious, like, what is your level? Like, if you see someone do a truly heinous act, because I'm trying to think about this from a movie script perspective. Obviously.
Yeah.
So you have someone who is a serial killer, but do you then start wondering about their mindset? How do they get there?
Yes, that's where my mind goes immediately. Yeah. I don't have this bloodlust or feeling of like, deep revenge or retribution.
Or justice. Yeah.
No, I don't have that. I have a feeling of what is driving that person. God, their lives must be miserable too. Does anybody want to be a killer?
From a place of curiosity or from a place of, I'd like to fix that?
Oh, I guess, yeah, that's a great question. I guess I don't really think of myself as a, fixer. Okay. I just am reacting to it kind of on a gut level of feeling bad. I feel very lucky to be able to be nice. To me, that's a great privilege. It means I don't have to worry about where my next meal is coming from. It means I have enough resources that I can go and help somebody if they drop something on the street or donate an organ or whatever. This is a great privilege. When there are limited resources, it's understandable that people become competitive and mean.
Sure.
When you're hungry, you think about how angry we get when we're hungry now, and we have
a word for it.
Exactly. Yeah. So imagine a population who's experiencing that and what it must do to them. Yeah, of course.
How does one wake up in the morning and say, I want to donate a kidney to a stranger?
For me, I just like I think we briefly spoke. I had heard about it on a podcast, and they were talking about effective altruism. It was an interview with somebody who was part of that movement, and they talked about donating a kidney not being like a big deal. And
interesting.
Well, I mean, it's not. I mean, I have experienced zero negative consequences. Zero. I don't have to even watch the alcohol I drink. I've experienced zero negative consequences.
I love that. That's the barometer. Do I have to watch how much alcohol?
Well, yeah, no, for me, it's like I don't drink much anyway, but like all I'm saying is like even my most, let's say debaucherous activity doesn't have to be curtailed, not that I'm so thrilled I get to drink, but like, no, but it's true. So, I don't know. Look, I come from a family of vegetarians, I'm not a vegetarian. When we just did Thanksgiving, what we do is Thanksgiving, where we adopt turkeys, put the turkeys' pictures on the table while we eat tofu. And my sister reads from Jonathan Safran Foer's Eating Animals book, where she stands up and reads, they clip the beaks off the turkey with a boiling knife, and so we're not eating meat, but we're also shamed about meat eating as a concept, and we adopt these turkeys. And the pictures of the turkeys are on the table with names and what they like doing, like facing into a nice breeze or something.
Where do you adopt them from? How does one adopt a turkey?
From like maybe the Farm Sanctuary, which is a place upstate, which adopts, which rescues animals.
Got it.
Anyway, I say all this because I'm a meat eater. I leave that knowing everything that my sister's read in the book about the hot knife and factory farming, and I eat meat. And I recognize totally this is not ethical. This is something I think we'll probably look back on the factory farming system as completely, unethical, retrograde, brutal. And I don't do that. So I'm not like a great person. I recognize that. There are things in my life
that... Is that the barometer? That like you have to be perfect to be great?
No, but I think if you know a lot about something and you still choose not to engage with it, then yeah, there's some ethical gap there. I know so much about the factory farming system because I grew up in a family with vegetarians and vegans. And so I don't do anything about it. So yeah, I think there's a gap there in my ethics. If I was ignorant about it, I wouldn't have as much, I think, complicity. So with the kidney thing, to me, it was like a non-sacrifice in any way. To me, I talked to my sister about it. She's nervous. She wants to do it because she heard about it from me and everything, but she's nervous to do it for a dozen reasons, like a lot of people who say that they're very nervous to do it for a dozen reasons. And yet I look at her getting a soy milk latte or something, and I'm like, I can't believe she's
making
not
that
getting
sacrifice.
That. Yeah. So I think we think of sacrifices. My wife's a teacher. She goes to school every day. I sometimes go in with her and I'm like, this is a grueling job. You don't get to talk about what you want to talk about. You have to talk about, this Gothic series that the curriculum's forcing them to read, and so, I think we all have sacrifices. You drove in 2 hours today from your house. I, walked from 13 blocks, you made a sacrifice because you have dogs and you want to live in the suburbs. I live in the city because it's convenient to everything that I want to do. So I think we all have sacrifices we want to make, and we're all calculating the risk rewards of those sacrifices. And for me, donating a kidney, I don't even call it a sacrifice. I got treated like a king in a hospital for 3 days. I got, they give you a lunch order and you could order anything you want on the thing. It's exciting because you press a little button on the computer on your TV of what you want to eat. And to me, it was like just this fun experience where I got kind of like treated really nicely and yes, it also ends up, saving somebody's life, but it's too abstract a concept for me to even understand that it's saving somebody's life. I don't know who the person is. I don't know what it means to have.
Did you choose not to know who the person is?
Kind of, like, you have to opt in to know who the person is, and so the baseline is not knowing. If you want to know who it is, it's quite an effort. You have to write a letter to them, and they have to choose to accept and write a letter to you, and it goes through the intermediaries through the hospitals. To me, it was like, the truth of my surgery was unusual, which is that the person who was my intended recipient, who I did not know, came into the hospital while I was getting my operation. They came into their hospital in Pennsylvania or Chicago or something, and they were sick. They couldn't get the operation that day.
Oh, wow.
So while I was like halfway through my surgery, obviously I'm unaware, they had to find another recipient. So they called the next person down in a different state, and that person has to get their bags, pack up their family, whatever they need, and go to the hospital, because my kidney comes out of me, gets put on a helicopter at the hospital.
Very VIP kidney you have.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It goes to Teterboro Airport, the private airport in outside the city, and it flies to another city, goes to a helicopter, and goes to that hospital. Wow. So it's an immediate process. My kidney was out by 10 in the morning and was in somebody at 3. Isn't that incredible?
Wow. And is that person aware that it's your kidney? Like, you might not be aware, but are they?
They're not, but I was thinking, since I'm like doing some interviews now about it, and I may have mentioned when I donated my kidney, maybe if people are like internet savvy and curious, maybe they would suspect, but there were probably, a dozen people getting new kidneys that day.
Okay, fair.